This is Jim Ziegler, the Alpha Dog, and this is the Dog Pound. Oh my gosh, we got the full Dog Pound posse on today. Everybody's here, starting with the Duchess of Productivity, April Simmons from the Horn Automotive Group. Hi, kid.
Whoop whoop! Happy Tuesday, my friends.
Happy Tuesday. Tuesdays are always happy. I'll tell you. And when we talk about one of the most brilliant women in the car business, and I'm talking about what's your title?
The Empress of Executive Management.
The Empress of
You made it
Executive
up.
Management. I love that. I just want to be sure. I want to hear you say it.
Oh, I got a T-shirt made.
Oh, do you really?
We should
The
get
Empress of
T-shirts.
Executive Management, a woman who's held every executive position in a car dealership. And I'll tell you, it wouldn't be a broadcast without the king of reinsurance, the F&I mogul, talking about the mad Russian himself, Max Zanan. Hi, guy.
Hey, Jim, how are you?
Well, I'm charged up, as you can see. It's been a great week. Did you catch the broadcast I did with Sean Welch earlier?
No, I haven't, but I have a fun story for you. I was just on the phone with a friend of mine who is like a big shot at the IA American Warranty Group, which is like a big F&I provider. Used to be called IAS.
Thought I was your only big shot friend. Whatever.
Right. So many years ago, right? His first job as a sales manager, right? He got hired without prior automotive experience after working for Ford Credit. And he was sent to Jim Ziegler training. And he became the highest grossing sales manager. Within 2 months, he became a GSM of that dealership, right? And now he's like number 3 in IA.
Jim Ziegler sales trade. Well, who is this person?
So his name is John Lutman, and this was at one of the Coons dealerships. We're probably going back 25, 30 years ago.
Well, I've done a lot of them.
It's a small world.
Now, we haven't got a title for Jason Harris yet. Jason Harris, the king of strategy by Jason. Hi, guy.
What's going on? How you doing?
Having the best day of my life, of course.
And some of the best looking days. Jim,
I
you're
got your call. We dressed alike.
I know. We text each other this morning, guys.
Are we taking suggestions for Jason's official title? Is the audience going to participate in this? I think this is a fantastic.
Should we get a vote?
I think if we switch Max to Czar, which ties to the Mad Russian, then King is available. And not
Yeah, the king. Okay, we'll work out a title for you, and the queen of BDC management. I mean, one of the most brilliant women in the technical world of BDC management, customer communications, Bobbie Herron.
Thank you, sir.
Yep, Bobbie.
I'm gonna start
my
and just travel around with me everywhere. And whenever I walk into a room, I could get like an intro. Like, I'm thinking about pre-recording it and just starting to play it as I walk in places.
We've got one heck of a broadcast today. We got a lot of subjects. I'd asked you earlier, did you, April, you saw my broadcast with Sean Welch this past week.
Absolutely.
You know,
So good.
I don't know why we had 1,023 live viewers. I usually get 15 or 20.
You know, I think the reality of it is that, you know, you and Sean both have this vision of we're going to tell the truth, and just having the two of you, it was bound to be a spicy episode, and I don't think it disappointed. So it was fabulous. It was really, really good.
Fantastic. Well, the subject today is the EV movement, the electric vehicle movement. Is that losing momentum? I'm seeing specifically and more so with Ford than others, but they had a little headline in Auto News that 29 dealers dropped out of the program. But, you know, I look and saw that there's dozens of dealers in New York, Massachusetts, North Carolina, they're getting involved with their dealer associations. I think it's going to be some legal action against Ford. So the dealers are not as happy as Ford is telling people they are. It doesn't appear to be that way. Just my opinion. What do you think, Max?
Well, first, John London worked at Coons Ford of Annapolis.
Second, Max, I'm watching his text
He
messages.
just texted me. He just texted me because he's watching.
Let me tell you, I remember that. I was Patrick Shuey was the general manager.
And then John Ludman took you to the airport.
Yes, he did. I remember him distinctly. That was when I was consulting the Coons organization in Annapolis. I remember, like I say, Patrick Shuey was the general manager. He took me to the airport. I remember it clearly. And that was 25 years ago.
That's exactly right.
Okay. A Facebook user just came in and said 30 states are filing complaints against Ford. Leave out the 13 ZEV states. What is that?
Zero emission vehicle state.
Oh.
So Jim, I think, you have this concept in math. It's called deviation from the mean, right? and deviation from the mean is what happened during the pandemic, right? Everybody lost their mind, right? So the manufacturers decided they can sell direct. Dealers decided that they don't have to negotiate, right? And now, right, we're coming back to the mean.
That's the beautiful thing about math, isn't it, Max?
Exactly. Back to the mean, right? So all of a sudden, dealers realize that, well, maybe this electric thing is a complete fantasy, right? And the investment requirement, right? There is no return on investment, no matter how much you're going to stretch the math. It just makes zero sense, especially in New York, especially in New York City, where there's nowhere to charge a car, right? There's nowhere to park a car, period.
I was going to say.
Right.
There's no reason to have a car in New York. I went there last weekend to catch a Broadway show and went downtown and stayed with a friend who has an apartment down there. I can't for the love of me figure out why people drive there. Just what is the point? Is it you're just going to die every 14 seconds? You must
46 Ford dealers in North Carolina signed the complaint on the EV program. So Ford
is that a failure of EVs, or is that just a failure of another Ford program?
Is it or is it for violation of franchise laws for what they're trying to do with popping out EVs?
Exactly.
That's what I figured. That's the most ground for litigation. I mean, when I saw the topic for today, like, are EVs losing momentum? I don't think they're losing momentum. I think this maybe is just what the market demand is, right? I've said it the whole time, and forget the fact that I live in the middle of nowhere where EVs are not practical. There's no infrastructure, and it's not something that the average American is going to be able to afford. And I know there's some lower price point models that are out there, but with the cost of having a charging station installed in your house and then having, like, it just does not make sense for the majority of Americans.
Well, Jennifer,
but an EV doesn't do that. So
Jennifer, all these dealers paid to have a franchise. They should be able to sell everything that franchise sells, and not have the
doesn't mean you want to
split into two corporations.
Right. Did you hear what Jason said? If they even want to.
Let's talk about Fiat. You want to talk about Fiat? Let's talk about Scion. All right. Let's talk about the new Jeep stores. Like, come on. Just because the manufacturer gets
what about Scion?
A good idea doesn't mean I should buy into it.
What about Scion, Jason?
They make great used car buildings now, Jason. I don't know what you're complaining about Scion for.
They're amazing.
Well, Scion, Jim Farley was ahead of that program.
We'll see. No surprise.
Oh God, Jason, don't feed into that. We didn't tell them the rules before the class started, did we?
No, they're matching. They're both gonna get on top. It could be on Jim Farley. So.
You know what I picture in my head?
We talk about there's multiple sides here, because we can't blend them together. Are we talking about EVs as a vehicle option for consumers? Are we talking about the forced model that
we're talking about the forced model?
Right. So that is less to do with our opinion on the vehicle or its availability than it is about a program being forced on dealers. And didn't they make them? I could be wrong about this, but didn't I read that they had to run their chargers around the clock? There was a whole with the top tier certification level. There was a whole thing with that, and so that's not the same as having an opinion on the car or if it should be sold or where it should be sold at. And I'm not saying we shouldn't talk about both, but we should keep it separate when we're talking about the OEM.
Well, I think we are. I mean,
Yeah.
we're getting there because.
But here's my question: are they really separate though? Because shouldn't the OEM be putting things in place that support consumer demand so that the dealers, the franchise dealers, are successful, not forcing models and functions on massive investments?
That's what we're
on dealers
saying.
that are not going to generate revenue.
Nobody is against EVs. I mean, let's get that out.
Well, except for Max.
Except for
Nobody
Max.
is saying, but
I am categorically against EVs.
Yeah,
Well,
he wears.
One day when I'm a billionaire, I'm buying
I
Max an
love the oil
EV,
fields.
Right.
like just so I can deliver it to him.
there are people that love EVs. They bought Teslas. They're buying Ford EVs. They're buying. Every brand has an EV model now, but the idea that General Motors is taking Buick 100% EV, I think that's crazy.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I think the big thing that this Facebook user just posted is very, very factual. It's not a matter of the OEM forcing us to do things. They always force us to do things. I mean, I'm sorry, but every single OEM forces the dealer to do a lot of things that we don't always agree with, and we do it. One of the biggest problems with some of the OEM mandates with EV is that it just goes too far. To tell me that I have to put all of these consumer-facing chargers on the dealership lot just to sell EVs. Well, what if I sell EVs that are miles and miles away? These people aren't coming to my lot. What are we thinking? Like dealerships are going to be a hangout place now? This is where people come to just have fun? I mean, I don't.
It's like Starbucks. Bring your laptop.
Well, that's what's going to happen. We're going to reboot the cafe model. Remember that?
Well, you
Yeah,
almost
funny
have
enough.
I just
Look at this. We've sold internal combustion engine vehicles for years, but they never required the dealer to have gas pumps.
Because there's an infrastructure to support that model for consumers in America.
But the
And there's not
infrastructure
now.
has to be for the
But I think the infrastructure.
OEM.
But I
That's
think.
the infrastructure.
I think the infrastructure for the internal combustion engine vehicles is there because of the market conditions. There is supply and demand. There is no infrastructure for the electric vehicles because there is no supply and demand. So now somebody is trying to push the infrastructure costs onto the dealer, and that's not fair. Which again brings me to the original point that nobody, except for Tesla buyers, right, want to buy an electric car. Nobody is knocking on April's door saying, April, please sign me up. I'd like to get this electric this or electric that, right? This is the reality, right? And dealers are facing the reality that they have to shell out $1.2 million to satisfy somebody's fantasy. That's ridiculous.
Yeah, but you know what though? Boohoo, you guys signed the franchise agreement. You knew that the OEM has history of doing stupid crap like that in the past. Is it any bloody surprise that they're coming down and saying, we want you to invest in this and then invest in this and then whatever the flavor of this month is going to be? Like, look, there are some OEMs that are much better at this than others. Does Subaru come around and start forcing people down their throats with new programs and stuff? No, they don't.
Yeah, they do, but they're good programs.
I was going to say yes, okay, but you know what I mean. Not the. Hey, I got a good idea. Imagine if we
Subaru
did.
Connect is amazing. I love it.
But you guys know what I mean. I mean, you kind of bought into a franchise that has history of just trying crap out at the expense of you, the dealer. I mean,
are you saying play stupid games, get stupid prizes? Is that what you're trying to say, Jason?
Well, listen, I think the real problem is that the woke culture infiltrated the business. It infiltrated the academia.
Oh, for
right?
crying out
I
loud.
was going to say, here we go.
For crying out loud.
And now it
It's them
infiltrated
woke
the business. So
people.
you have people
I don't think that's what it is at all, Max.
right, but I think it is, and this is what happens. When you believe in fantasies, right? And like Brian Benstock says, I am an environmentalist, right? And because of that, I am against electric vehicles, because
Yeah.
electric vehicles are emissions elsewhere vehicles, right? Because if you look at Africa, right, this is really not good for the environment. It's not good for the society. What's happening in order for the OEMs to mine these minerals to produce the battery?
Well,
It's counterproductive, guys.
Well, not even just the batteries, Max, even for the end user. People have to realize the majority of electricity generated in the United States is generated from coal plants. So
They've
that's
modeled
like the
themselves-
dirtiest fuel.
They've modeled themselves after Tesla. And I've read this week that a Model Y Tesla, if the battery cracks, you have to scrap the entire vehicle.
See, I want to just jump on this real quick because I don't actually think it's woke culture, Max. What I think it is, and I'll try to find a better word to say it because the way I want to say it is not show appropriate. Some board members and executives had a crush on Mr. Musk, like Elon. He's like, oh, we want to be like Elon. So they're trying to be like him, which that's not woke infiltrating it. It's I'm trying to emulate someone I think is cool. So let's force everybody to do dumb stuff. That's what I think it is.
Because they're woke.
Oh, those guys aren't woke. Those guys have ego problems.
When we talk about this stuff, I just can't even take it seriously. It's like, I mean, okay, it doesn't have anything to do with being woke. It doesn't even have anything to do with being an environmentalist. It doesn't even have anything to do with having a crush on Elon Musk. What it has to do with is being able to adapt to the consumer and to new technology. And the reason that EV cars aren't as in demand as they would be is because there isn't a current structure for them. You're correct. And the dealer shouldn't have to house that or take it on. But they've had to do it with everything else. I mean, we went from bikes to cars at one point. And can you imagine there's probably a group of people just like us, like, oh my God, they want to put gas and make wheels move? You sound ridiculous. Every single time we talk about this, it's like, come on. It is not the end of the freaking world, guys. It is just an EV.
Well, see, what's wrong here is that the manufacturers have committed to electric EV technology as if nothing else is going to be developed.
Oh, I agree with you that all
hydrogen
that should
and
be how
all
it is.
sorts of things are coming. But, matter of fact, Toyota is pretty committed to hydrogen.
Which
Well,
would
they've been
be
there for
a
years.
clean way to have.
Well, okay, so
clean
Jennifer,
fuel.
like I have a Rivian R1S on order, all right, and remodeling the house. We're doing a bunch of work.
You're never going to get it.
Might be the only thing that comes in these days.
On this
They'll be
podcast, once I
bankrupt
tag them
before
with
you
it,
let
they're going to
it
make
come
sure
in.
I get it.
Did you put a deposit on it, big boy?
Damn straight I did. But I'm installing a solar power system in my house. I was going to do it anyways, and with I'm going to be able to feed my own EV. I don't need to. I'm not going to have to rely on the grid. I'm not going to have to do any of that stuff. I think that is one of the biggest advantages of EVs is that you can actually produce your own electricity. I can't produce my own gas. Right. So look, I think, what we're seeing is the beginning pieces of a technology that hasn't ultimately become clean yet because it hasn't fully been flushed out in the infrastructure.
You're pretty woke is what I'm hearing.
Right. That's exactly what I'm doing.
And, I wish my wife could hear that, man. She would just be sticking there. You bloody kidding me?"
I think what I take away from that is that, Jason, you have the means to
Yes.
do that.
100%.
And to set up the solar system, to have the battery, to be able to generate and stay off the grid.
To do it
where
properly.
that's not
Jason
something
can
that we
afford
do
it.
in consumers.
Well, it's no different than someone going out and buying a Hellcat. Look, you don't buy a 707 horsepower supercharged largest displacement V8 ever produced because you can't afford it.
Right.
No,
That's been my point the whole time. Is that
if I just wanted to get there,
is all it is.
if I just wanted to get there and have air and tunes, I could spend $15,000.
There you go.
So and air and tunes is all you need. So
But that's not what people want to spend. They want to spend, $90,000 on a Denali.
exactly.
It's all consumer
jump
demand.
in here a second.
So
April?
I want to drive right down the middle of the road now because we have both sides going on. The reality of it is this: perception is reality. So if you believe in EVs, those are customers I want to sell. If you don't believe in EVs, I want to have ICE vehicles to be able to sell. because quite frankly, I want to sell them all. If it's profitable and it makes us money, we should be all in on it regardless of what it is. Okay. So depending on where you live, depending on your demographics, those things should come into account, and they should come into account at the OEM level. So the issue that I have with them forcing dealers to put this much in is they really should be looking at it from a standpoint of what is the demographic of my particular dealership? And then let's be smart about it. If you want me to help build the infrastructure, you know what? Quite frankly, it needs to be there to support these people who are buying vehicles. Why are you making me put it on the dealership lot? Why don't we put it somewhere and then use that terminal for advertising to our dealerships, right? Why would we not put the infrastructure at the mall? Put the infrastructure next to the gas station. Put the infrastructure where it actually makes
You mean like Tesla has done at the grocery stores all over the country?
Well, actually, in Canada, it's really common that you actually find them at gas stations now. So, you know, I don't know here in the U.S.
Well, Jason, in Canada, the gas lobby is cheaper than it is in the United States. Right? In the United States, the gas lobby is categorically against putting charges in gas stations because it takes away from their business.
Yeah.
Well,
I don't know. It's pretty expensive to charge at a gas station.
I would like to see charging stations take credit cards and make people pay for the charging stations.
A lot do.
They do.
Yeah.
Almost
It's like
everyone I've used has.
the air machine now. Remember how when you wanted to air up your tires to the gas station, it used to be free. Now you got to pump like $1 into it.
One of my web repairmen that repairs my computer, he has a Mach E Mustang, and he goes over to the Hampton Inn and charges it all the time on the
And I think that I want to go back to April's point on regional demand, because I know we talk and we make fun of Ford a lot. I've got a store that recently they sold 30 Mach-E's in 1 month. But regionally that makes sense for them. And it was part of it. I mean, we're talking about San Diego versus, you know, where like I think Connor had said on one of the comments earlier about rural Tennessee, where it makes sense if that's what the consumers want. And I just thought that's what capitalism was. You
go back to the dealers, Jennifer. Go back to the dealers a second. You know, we're looking at all the dealers that I have talked to are acting like they're going to be in business 10 years from now. And most of the manufacturers are acting like you are not going to be in business 10 years from now. And I think dealers are in a little fantasy land about the intentions of the manufacturers.
I mean, or maybe they're just think that the OEM actually is not going to be able to do it. Now, we've been through this in recent history. All of us on the program were in the business when we saw the constriction and so many franchises get pulled during the last recession. So while I really don't think the OEMs can pull this off. I mean, goodness, look at their financial statements right now. Like, really, we think they can do this?
Yeah, 100%, Jennifer. That's always been the case. The OEMs have always thought that they could do the job better, you know, than the dealers themselves. And this is not the first and last time they've attempted to put down restrictions. I mean, look at Saturn, for crying out loud. And they just, as a manufacturer, I'm going to tell you,
they lost $1 billion a year.
See, that's what I'm saying. Like, you can't, look, there's always this relationship between this wholesale retail that we have, you know, between the manufacturer and us and stuff like that. Look, the bottom line is the dealer's always going to think they can do a better job than the manufacturer. The manufacturer's always going to think they can do a better job than the dealer. This is the same story, just repeated and played out in multiple versions.
Jason, Rick Wagner was head of General Motors, and I don't know why anybody thinks that guy's competent. I don't personally believe he's competent.
He made a car.
How do you blow through $32 billion in less than a decade? How do you blow through $32 billion?
I'm one helicopter and a shopping trip away from making that a possibility.
That's Bobbie. I bet you Bobbie could figure it out today.
How many islands could we buy for that amount of money, B?
First of all, I would help all kinds of people first, and then I would go to Ulta and buy all the lipsticks that I don't allow myself to buy on a regular basis because they're $50 a piece.
They put Oldsmobile that was making a profit. Mm-hmm. They deceased Oldsmobile. It ended. To keep money losing Saturn in business.
Yeah. Growing up in General Motors dealerships throughout my career, I mean, that was devastating. Losing Olds and Pontiac was devastating. Not just for us, but for, I mean, those were brands that consumers were very loyal to.
Yeah.
What
And
about
the brands that always
what
made
about
you laugh?
keeping Buick? What about keeping Buick?
I have a Buick.
Of course you do.
Buick is actually, in my estimation, a better car than the Cadillac models.
100%.
I drove the Cadillac models and owned them, and I'm telling you what, there's not a car. I am not kidding you when I tell you I'm almost 8 years into ownership of this Buick Enclave, and I have been trying to buy a car for 5 years. Swear, nothing cross counts. Can't find something I like more. That car is amazing.
And I've been calling it a minivan for
It
8
is
years.
not a minivan, and it is amazing. I will tell you this: smartest salesperson I ever trained while I was working the desk in the dealership sold me the love of this car on I love a really good radio, like lots of bass. I'm like a 16-year-old boy when it comes to my music. I'm like, make it loud, make it shake things, right? He puts a USB stick inside of the thing with a helicopter sound on it, and he goes, Bobbie, come here, I swear this got a great radio. I'm like, no, it doesn't. It sounded like a helicopter landed in the showroom, and I was like, all right, well, whatever, when we got an RDR tonight, the Enclave or the Audi, I'll take it. And I have not regretted it since then. It's a cooler car than people think.
I don't disagree.
Okay, now the other issue that's come about is Ford just hired John Dion as Chief Transformational Officer. Now,
Chief Transformational Officer?
yeah.
He's an agent of change.
This guy,
I like that.
this guy's he came from outside the industry. And
Okay.
Farley hired him to because of quality woes and improve operational excellence and execution.
He hired
In other
somebody
words,
from outside automotive.
Farley I'm thinking Farley's sort of admitting he can't handle it.
Right. That's what it sounds like to me.
This is what I interpret from John Dion, Ford Chief Transformation Officer. He's from ESAB Corporation. Looks to cut costs, overcome quality woes, and improve operational execution. Now that's a lot of woke talk for you there.
You guys are woke. You guys do know that the definition of woke is actually a positive thing, right?
Sure.
Merriam-Webster defines it as aware of and actively attentive to important societal facts and issues.
Okay.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, Jason, what do you think?
I think we need to get Jim Farley on this podcast. That's what I think. I think I just want to see Jim and Jim, the two. I want to see them in a room together, and just kind of finally
That'd be hilarious.
ouch, like
What are you talking about, me and Farley?
We welcome collaboration.
So what's interesting is that's not a new position. I just Googled him because I wanted to.
it's a current position, of course.
Yeah, he's replacing someone. Like that's not a brand new thing Farley created because he's messed up so bad.
I'm changing my title at my company. Instead of being president of world domination, I'm officially going to become the chief transformational officer because I think that is a cool ass title that just encompasses everything.
Well, let's go back to the dealer focus. 29 dealers dropped out of the EV program. And Ford said, well, it wasn't that many. But now we've got several hundred dealers signing petitions against Ford in New York, Massachusetts, and in North Carolina. 54 of them just in North Carolina. So the Ford dealers are in revolt, but and that Ford's bragging. Well, most of them signed up for the program. How much were they spending, April?
Well, it depends. There's multiple levels that you could actually sign up for, but the majority
Amway dealerships. Okay,
yeah, you're at that 1.2 million.
$1.2 million. Plus, they've got to maintain the vehicles, and they haven't got the techs that can repair them. And most of them are non-repairable. That came up this past week. EVs, just a crack in the battery in the lowliest $20,000.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, just a cracked battery. I mean, how's service contracts going to do on these EVs, Max?
Yeah, Max.
So listen, guys. To be honest with you, I don't think dealers understand that the bulk of their income comes from fixed ops.
Mm-hmm.
And when you go, woke and you go all electric, your fixed ops revenue just evaporates, right? Because there is no powertrain. What kind of service work will you be doing except for changing brakes and tires? And dealers have a tiny, tiny market share when it comes to
Right.
tires.
It's the number one point of dissension for those of you
It's
watching. for your service
non-existent, right? Because people would go to Michelin, they would go to Goodyear, they go anywhere before they realize that dealers sell tires, right? So from that perspective, yes, there are vehicle service contracts for electric cars, but again, the money is in the internal combustion engine vehicles, because you make money selling cars, you make money selling F&I products, and then you make money servicing these cars, right? And this is the most important part of the equation, because F&I is the glue, right, that connects the sales department to the service department.
Well, it should be,
So-
Max.
Correct. But if you do everything through over-the-air updates in the electrical vehicle, there's no reason for the customer to come to the service drive. There's no reason.
Well, that's
for
a
the
positive for the customer. That is a positive to owning an electric vehicle.
But that's happening even on our ICE vehicles. Over-the-air updates are
100%.
completely different than repairing a vehicle. Look at Tesla. The number one complaint Tesla owners have is they all need these repairs and they can't actually get them done. So I actually disagree with, which is a shocker, but I'm going to disagree with Max today because I think there is an absolute huge upswing in electrics and fixed ops opportunities. I think every little nook and cranny that breaks every electric doodad or battery or whatever has to be done, if we get ahead of that and we get techs and we train techs and we do that, I'm not saying transition everything, but understand there is an opportunity for money there that I think will be huge and will put us ahead of the game over the Teslas and other ones because we already have the infrastructure for that. We already have the dealerships across
There you go.
to be able to repair those vehicles, get people into the service drive and actually fix them and get them back on the road. One of the big questions I want to ask, because I honestly don't know, this is one of those moments where, shame on me for not, but does anyone actually know the average amount of time if we were to go to Aaron's comment there, if we added a charging station at each gas station, would that not help the infrastructure and take away the responsibility on the dealers? Well, here's my question to that. How long does it take for one car to go from no electric in it to max electric in it? How long does that
I can speak to the charging stations they actually had in Canada. It was the gas station was Petro Canada, and their fast charging system. So 20 minutes gets you between 60 to 70% full charge.
Okay, so here's where the big problem in my opinion comes into play. So that's what I thought. I just didn't want to say it without having some facts there. So I'll give you an example. I live in the Phoenix Metro. If I bought an electric vehicle to drive back and forth to work, it would be fine for me. I can plug it in when I get home. I'm not driving that far. Even if I drove to a store or two during the day, probably not a big deal. But then I got to drive to Yuma, or I've got to drive to Sholo. And these are 3 hours away. My drive to Yuma, there is one place to stop between here and Yuma, and I would have to. It is too far away to make it on one charge. So I'd have to stop. If they put one charging station at that gas station, there is no way you would get out of there in 5, 6, 7 hours if you only had 5% of the population in EVs trying to make
Right, because you'd have 10 cars lined up.
Oh, guys, the infrastructure is always going to be the issue. Look, the same conversation happened when we switched from horse and carriage. Right? Look, owning a horse, I don't personally own a horse. I do have friends that own a horse. I'm going to tell you right now, there's a lot of maintenance and servicing that goes in owning a horse. Where the hell you're going to store it, how far you go on it. You need to feed the damn things. Look, there was probably a big conversation from the switch there to ICE vehicles.
But Jason, that gas station has like 30, 40 pumps in it, and you can go from 0 to full in 3 minutes.
100%.
So
one of our sidebar users says Ford does not recommend using DC current fast chargers regularly because they degrade battery performance and degrade the battery itself.
Oh,
I mean, how long do we think it's going to be before there's Mophie packs for your car? Like,
Well, and then here's what I want to tell everyone. The
I
reality
thought that's what regenerative braking systems did, was to help charge the battery.
I'm all good with the
I don't
electric
know what
car.
these big words you're using,
Just
but it
recognize
feels
that
like it
the
should
small
exist.
percentage. Can we just say that we are not trying to go from 0 electric cars to 100% electric cars in 5 years? That's not feasible. That we need to have two plans of attack here and stop thinking we can go from 0 to 100. That's where I think where the debate really plays out, is that there's just this idea that we're going to build this infrastructure in 5 years. No, we're not.
Well,
We're not.
Couldn't
Yeah,
possibly happen.
And that's what I
Could
meant
not
by
happen.
market manipulation.
But guys, you have 17 states that are going to prohibit sale of ICE vehicles in 2030 or 2035.
Well, good. That's a lot of fixed ops revenue for the current ICEs on the road.
Well,
That's
that law can be changed.
When we took them off the road, can you imagine what this is going to look like in reverse? My goodness.
You know, I'm going to go back. I'm
Politics
going to
will
go back to talking about the Hellcat. All right, it uses it literally tells you that you need to use over 93 octane gas. Do you know how many gas stations have over 93 octane gas? Not a whole hell of a lot.
No.
So the Hellcat owners out there have the same damn problem that the EV owners have.
We're not trying to force everyone to buy a Hellcat, right? We're
Maybe
saying
we should.
niche amount of market, right? So I think that's where the reality comes into play. Look, I have my personal opinions on all this stuff, and yes, Max and I are very much aligned, probably in a lot of our personal opinions on this, and Jennifer and I too. But when I put my business hat on, which is all we really should be talking about on this broadcast, is what makes us more money for the dealers. That's what matters. What makes more money for our vendor partners who are with us. But your favorite word, Jim, I did it just for you.
Thank you, April.
But
You look lovely today, by the way. You're doing a great job.
But at the end of the day, we got to put our business hat on and stop worrying about all the other stuff and say, look, if people want to buy EVs, I want to sell them. If people want to buy ICE, I want to sell them. I want to make sure that I have my fixed ops to handle everything that the customer wants to purchase. We just need to understand that the OEMs and the government need to let that organically happen based on what the customer wants, where they are at, period.
Yes.
Exactly.
That's
Well,
exactly
and that's
what's
perfect,
not
April.
happening.
That's exactly it. Because if you think about
But
this, and
that's
this
what's
is
not
what
happening,
franchise
guys.
dealers have
No, but
always been good
that
at.
is
Sorry,
against
Max, but this
the
is
Farley
we have
Barra.
always been good at taking care of the consumers in our community. That's what we do.
The Jim Farley, Mary Barra, the dictators of EV, they're saying you're going to have to do it. We're going to transform all of our models to EV. Now, guess what? If politics change and
That's why we
elections
hired a new
change
transformational,
politics, all of a
executive.
sudden we have different politics. A lot of these EV directives are going to be gone. They're going to open up the pipeline again. They're going to start building cars that use petroleum. It's going to happen.
Open up
I
what
think-
pipeline, Jim?
The one they're trying to build from Alaska hit.
You know, there's three things there, and I love what you said, April, because you're right. There's a difference between business and personal, and when we're talking about this stuff, and I'm with you in that. I feel like I'm always the one who's like, EV is great, EV is great, EV is great. But the truth is, I'm trying to be where my customer is with what they want and the way they want it delivered. And that's what I care about. Whether I drive an EV or not, I drive a gas-guzzling SUV, and I'm one human.
The manufacturers don't see it that way, though. They want to dictate the direction the customers go.
But is it really EV, or is it these manufacturer mandated programs that we're
You
actually?
say EV or EV? It depends on which brand you're talking about.
Nobody's against
Good
EVs.
cost
I don't think
control.
anybody is against EVs except Max.
No, it's
Right,
and
but I
Max
think
is
it's both,
against it.
right?
Max is looking at the opportunity for the dealer on their side of like reinsurance of the products that they offer and of keeping them protected. So I get where Max is coming from, but here's my question is, and I don't know that I'm 100% accurate on this, so correct me if I'm wrong. Was it not a requirement that Ford dealers, a majority of them, enroll in this program initially onto a certain level? And wasn't it that the dealers had come back and said that they didn't want to have no haggle pricing that was strict on it? They didn't want to have the remote delivery drop off and pickup option. and they didn't want to get certified to sell cars they already sold. So at NAD, I thought there was supposed to be an announcement of the changes to the program, which just came out, I think last week, I could be wrong. And they didn't address all of those things. In fact, the only 2 things I saw, not saying these were the only things, but this is what I kept reading in article after article and seeing in conversation, was that you wouldn't be capped on the amount that you sold in a year if you were in that lower tier program. And then I think it was something with the pricing structure, like the hypotheticals that aren't even all the way in yet. But I read that that's why a lot of the dealers were dropping out now, because some of them had waited to enroll based on what that would come in, and a lot of them hadn't. I get it, like North Carolina, these areas. I have truck dealers in Pennsylvania, B-lots that are massive, that are never going to sell an EV, and that's okay. But I imagine the Ford dealers there probably feel the same way.
Well, the other thing with that, Bobbie, that comes into play is that there's no actual guarantee on how many EVs you'll get. So,
Right.
so
the allocation, right?
talk about the ROI.
And they're limiting the profit on them. They're limiting the profitability.
Yeah, they have
Always OEMs always limit the profitability on everything. I mean, guys, look at the Ford Fast Lane program. Max, there we go.
They
You
are
have some thoughts about the Fast Lane program?
$300 a car. If I can only make $300 a car and no guarantee to how many cars I'm going to get, how long does that take for me to get my money back?
In April, I don't currently have a Ford store that I'm working with at this level. Are they co-opting these investments like BDub is for
No.
No, it's like the facility redesigns, right?
Correct.
Yeah, like I mean, VDub has been very aggressive for about 18 months on their EV co-op program, rolling out 100% separate co-op program for these types of investments.
BDub's not messing around. It's coming for the domestic for sure. Their product lineup is solid.
Now, there's another subject. I want to get in our last 20 minutes here. The Right to Repair Act is resurfaced.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we did a whole show on this a year and a half ago, and I resurrected that show and posted it on social media because people were acting like it was a brand new problem. Right now in Massachusetts, and there are several states that are fighting really hard because the Right to Repair Act is coming back full force. Now, at the same time, Ford just opened a service center for fleet vehicles. Now, that's attached to a dealership. I think I said at one time it wasn't, but I found out it is. But so a dealer can open up a fleet service center, a separate building, not attached to the dealership, somewhere else. I think the manufacturers are looking at, under the guise of the Right to Repair Act, not only will Jiffy Lube and Pep Boys and all these people have the same rights to be paid under warranty that dealers do, and have all access to all the stats, all the everything, everything. But I think the manufacturers are envisioning, and this is just a conjecture, opening their own service centers free of the dealers. Take it, somebody.
Well, I'm going to jump on that because I've always been an advocate of a dealer taking control of recon and of fixed, because you have to have your OEM certified technicians for certain work. But why should you not have a lower level tech or a training ground where you are training people that can then move up to those master type techs? It's so much more cost effective. And the Right to Repair Act seriously gives me eye twitches, as we have talked about it. It really came out. It's been forever. And I think when we had our state dealer association folks on, it was Bob Oken. How do you say his last name?
Bob Okunewski from Massachusetts.
Okay, I didn't want to slaughter Bob's name. Sorry.
Massachusetts is one of the states where they are really, really trying to enforce the Right to Repair Act, where, Jiffy Lube with substandard techs conceivably can have the same as highly trained.
Well, and the sad part of it is that they have more profitability at some points, right? Because of the overhead that so many franchise dealers do, because we're running everything through the same dang shop. Nobody says you have to, we just do, because that's the shop that we have. You have progressive dealers that are running, 2 or 3 shifts to try to make up some of that. But the whole idea of having, and this is going to sound terrible, like Billy Bob from Jiffy Lube, right? Servicing a type of vehicle like that.
Hey,
that
you know Billy too?
I do know Billy. Actually, Billy Bob is great. Honestly, for most of those, some of those independent service centers have better customer service than I've seen in some of my client service lanes.
Let me read to you in Maryland, where the big battle's going on right now, the state of Maryland, the new legislation that is up before their legislative body. Automakers will allow owners and independent repairers to purchase OEM diagnostic and repair information on a daily, monthly, or yearly subscription at reasonable terms. So in other words, private shops can purchase OEM diagnostic and repair information. Automakers will install open data platforms on all vehicles with telematics systems beginning in 2025.
Yeah, but that's one part. Or they have to be certified to do those repairs, just like our technicians are.
Exactly. I mean, even if you just open it up, these still get certified. Look, they already tried to do this once before. I don't know. I'm not putting a lot of weight into it.
But this is a real law that's going through in Maryland right now. I mean, they're putting it on the books.
Is it
All
going? Has it been
diagnostic-
passed already, Jim?
Jim, I think it's really simple here, right? If you're going to go against car dealers, it's not that hard, right? Because they're never unified. They're never on the same page.
Where's the dealer associations?
Exactly, right? So, and another point I want to make is that when the factory warranty runs out, service retention evaporates.
It does.
Right? So if the service retention evaporates after the warranty runs out, why not take a stab at the factory warranty, knowing that dealers are not unified? This is like taking candy from a baby. And Jim, this will be law in 50 states, and dealers would not know what hit them, right? You can take this to the bank. I'm glad this is a recorded program. You can replay it down the road. Right, I'm going on the record here. This is so obvious, guys.
Well, I'm just glad that I've had the honor of working with one of the most brilliant fixed ops directors in the entire country, Mr. Bill Demery over at Tom Wood. And Tom Wood is one of the only, I think they're still the only franchise dealer that actually owns Independent Service Center as well.
Bill Demery's on my class tomorrow at Northwood.
Oh, you and Bill are teaching tomorrow morning?
Me and Bill are teaching a class. I teach a general manager class at Northwood. I think new viewers find that out. I teach a general manager class to seniors at Northwood University, and Bill Demery is my guest instructor tomorrow morning.
Tell Bill I said hello.
Awesome.
Wicked brilliant. He's amazing. And some of the things people are like, what would you do? But he is hedging where the OEM is coming for the franchise dealers. He's responsible for all of the service for all their auto and power sports stores. So he's got to make sure he's staying a step ahead. Of course, they also have scholarships and tech training programs, but they put in front of their, I think the building for Toyota is about 5 years old now. Right in front of it, about 3 years ago, they built a Big O tires. So anybody who bounces from their Toyota service center, guess the very next place they're rolling into.
It's genius.
Well, if you'll remember, the president signed into law portions of the Right to Repair Act July a year ago.
I remember.
And now the different states are running reinforcing legislation through the states. Massachusetts and Maryland are the target states right now. I've got 3 pages in front of me. I was reading part of that to you. It's really detailed. And, and I'm not saying Jiffy Lube has substandard techs.
Right,
They might have a master tech. Okay. Okay. But anyway, they might. But, I'm not saying they don't. But anyway, who's going to be repairing these cars? What certifications do they have? What training do they have?
They should be required to have the exact same thing as a franchise dealership.
So guys, I can actually speak about Jiffy Lube, right? If you ever wanted to be a technician at Jiffy Lube, you had to go through 120 hours of training per year.
Really?
which is probably 6 times more than any car dealership.
The car
Is it
dealers
on
want
the
to train
job
them.
training, Max?
No, like online training, in-person training. So what I'm trying to say here is that if Jiffy Lube needs to get trained to work on the factory
You
warranty
think they'll pay
cars,
the money?
they will get
There
it
you
done,
go.
guys. They will
That's
get it
it.
done. Do not underestimate this
Facts, not
machine.
No,
opinions.
I'm not underestimating, but here's where my question comes into play with regards to this. When we talk about warranty and recall work, those two things, you have to have people who are certified working on the vehicle. I don't know about y'all, but when's the last time any of you went in? I mean, I'm sure somebody has, but gone in and done all just the certification online tests that you have to do. Just
Last week.
Just that, right? Do that for, like, a Jiffy Lube's going to do that for every single OEM and have techs that can do every single OEM to be able to check mark the boxes that would need to be check marked.
No, one guy's going to do it, and his name's going to go on all the warranty ROs.
But April,
That's how it's gonna
let me
work.
ask you this: if I told you that there was a business that the only reason for existence of that business is the simple fact that car dealers cannot make appointments for oil change, you would say
Yeah,
you're crazy.
I'd say you're right.
Right? and here
would
you
say
go.
you're
You got
right.
Jiffy Lube right
You know,
there.
like from a consumer standpoint, and I'm not to devil's advocate this at all, but I'm going to put my personal hat on instead of my business one for a second. One of the biggest benefits to me not buying a new car for the last 7 years is that I don't have to deal with the dealership for my service.
Yeah.
And I have really great clients and I have really great people across the country, but I have yet to find a place that I enjoy doing business with. And the service department here will even come pick up my car when I go to bed and bring it back to me the next day. But God love them if I can get them to call me back to let me know what's wrong, or to plan the time that I'm going to pick up, or to not have it for 6 days. I had to call the sales manager a couple months ago to get them on service, to get them to call me back. And the guy goes, well, why are you calling me? And I was like, oh, you're the most annoying person in the dealership for the service manager. I'm going to need you to go find him so I can get a call back on my car. And it was for a simple recall. And so that kind of frustration from the consumer standpoint only takes one time. And then fast forward a month ago, I went and got my oil changed at a Valvoline, right? It took 30 minutes. They were on top of
You didn't even have to get out of your car.
I didn't get out of the car. There was an awesome girl working at the desk that had just started and was like, they had it was fast, it was efficient, it was easy. And if it was that easy when I went to the dealership to get my car done as a consumer, I probably would go there more often.
Well, and then Bobbie, you get to tip them when you're done.
Yeah, I mean, like, right? I'm like, come to WYA with us. It's just, you kind of dread it, you know? It's like, I almost feel as if, and this is my personal opinion, no factual data to back it up, just as a consumer, that dealerships know that they can just get that business because it's just required that they get it. And so they don't have to do some of the extra stuff like calling somebody back.
Well, I don't know if that's a manpower issue, a process issue. I don't know that it's like, oh, I just know I'm going to get the business. I think a lot of service managers and directors wish they could solve that problem in their departments, or at least when they sit down with the other execs and look at their financial statement.
Well, I know for me and you, every exec we sit down to that works in service wishes they could do that, but it doesn't want to do either they're not empowered to or don't have the ability to put it into place. But how difficult?
If you're trying to figure out how,
right?
One thing,
Frustrating.
One of the headlines in Auto News, the headline was Jim Farley, Ford's dysfunction has returned. I mean,
It sounds like it's a personal vendetta.
where I grew up, we would say, "Bless his heart."
And I don't want to pick on Ford solely because General Motors, Mary Barra, you know, we got to remember they're spending $1.8 billion buying out 30-40% of their white collar employees. I mean, how efficient is that organization going to be without any management?
But that says something, right? Like all of these OEMs, like take aside what we think for a second and let's just like reality laid on the table. There's a massive uproar happening with their franchisees. There's a massive amount of money being put into this, and there's massive agreements being made politically to make this happen. There's something bigger than just our opinion happening there, or it wouldn't be a demand that had a timeline. And And it would also not be something that, like when Cash for Clunkers came out, and that was easy, right? Wipe out the cars on the road, not change an entire infrastructure, was a nightmare. I was a finance director at the time for Sonic Auto. It was a nightmare. And to think like this entire strategy and what could happen and what will change, like these aren't stupid people. I mean, we might think they're dumb once in a while, but these aren't stupid people. They lead massive corporations and have huge political ties and are brilliant in many areas that we are not, or are even educated enough to even think about being in. And yet they're deciding to.
We're going to have a difference of opinion there. I mean, okay, you're saying these people are not stupid, but I'm witnessing them doing stupid things.
No, I mean, well, hear me out when I say this. Sometimes a strategy can look like it's stupid or look uneducated when you don't know what's actually happening behind the scenes. There's no way that they're putting millions and billions of dollars and at risk and jeopardy all of their businesses because they on a whim woke up one day and were like, you know what,
Bobbie,
what else is happening there?
Tom Hanks. Stupid is and stupid does.
I'm not disputing that they're not intelligent in all ways.
I'm actually going to back Bobbie up here. I absolutely 100% think the puppet strings behind it all has everything to do with power and money, and has a lot of them pushing down these specific roads for a reason that puts more power and money into the people at the top of the top. So what that is, of course, none of us really truly can sit here and say we know, because we don't. But at the end of the day, we've just got to take what comes at us. And my personal opinion when it comes to whether we talk about right to repair, EVs, or franchise laws is that in this country, the consumer always will end up dictating what will happen, right? It might be painful. They might really try to shove this way or shove that way. But at the end of the day, we are a massive consumer society as a market.
With 3 minutes remaining,
right? We utilize only like 30% of the whole world's energy. We consume over 60% of the world's advertising. So tell me that we are not a consumer first society. At the end of the day, the consumer will decide what path we end up on.
With 3 minutes, with 3 minutes remaining, I just want to mention that General Motors just elected to stop forcing Buick customers to buy OnStar for $1,500. We talked about that they were going to force General Motors customers to buy OnStar, but they backed off of that now.
This is the return to the mean.
It's such a waste of money. I have a big thing.
This is the return, guys. This is the return to the mean.
We'll be giving it away for free, rebates, all the things. They're coming.
Yes. Rebates are back.
Exactly.
The business has
to like about uncertain my Wi-Fi, and they're just third party.
But Jim, also, listen, guys, you have to understand that at the end of the day, right, there's a difference between GM and Tesla, right? GM is being run by the professional management class, right? And they're spending somebody else's money. Elon Musk is spending his own money.
Running it himself.
So if you look at, right, exactly. And if you look at Twitter, right, he didn't buy out 75% of the staff. He fired 75% of the staff. And he is running the company with the remaining 25% and making more money than Twitter has ever made, right? So that's the difference, right? When you have skin in the game, you go to make market-based decisions.
GM has a history, at least for, and Bobbie can attest to this, being in the Michigan market, they have a history of burning their communities by eliminating production. So while I think it's smart for them to start looking at being efficient, I think that buying them out is going to actually be a cost savings versus the backlash they would have for a mass layoff.
Yeah, I mean, like, not only did I grow up in Michigan in this market and grow up in automotive, but my uncle retired from the board for GM, sat at the table. So I grew up around that in my family consistently, and those conversations that took place, and they burned communities to the ground here without any kind of care as they walked away. And they're still relishing in them.
Okay, next week we're going to be talking about certified pre-owns are off more than 9.4%.
Yeah.
So they're going to reach back and certify older cars.
Yeah, they've been doing that for 8 months, like 10
Yeah,
months on some
I
of
mean,
them.
but they have just redoubled on that CPO because used cars are getting scarce. They were depending on cars off lease. The cars haven't been leased. People are hanging on to them. There's less cars in the market. It's a lot to talk about. Everybody wave goodbye to the audience.